Our scripture reading for today's teaching comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 48, verses 8 through 21, and chapter 49, verses 28 through 33. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Then Joseph removed them from his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and he laid his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. And in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth."
When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this one is firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, God makes you as Ephraim and as Manasseh." Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your fathers." All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, "I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field at Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites." When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
I have to tell you, right away, this might feel random, but that song, Ooh La La, which in no way reflects actually the lyrics of that song, has a line that says, "I wish that I had known what I do now when I was younger." And I've always been haunted by that lyric. I've always just really been burdened to feel like I really do. I really wish I knew when I was 17 that I didn't need to be this insecure. I wish when I was an early parent I didn't need to carry these kind of burdens. And I'm sure that's going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, because you realize there's so much freedom and much more joy with the knowledge you had now if you could have applied that many, many years ago. We are finishing a series today on the life of Jacob. And it's fascinating because this is a guy who is the biggest fool in the whole Bible. He literally does nothing right. There's like no admirable moments about his life. He is a fool, yet God blesses him. But if you notice, here's what's incredible. Right before he dies, he's no longer a fool. In verse 8, and in fact, it's the life of Jacob, but what we're told in verse 8, it says, when Israel saw Joseph's sons. You may be wondering, if you've not been with us, who in the world is that? Who's Israel? Well, we were told several stories ago that when God meets Jacob and he has this climactic experience, he changes his name. This is his new story. This is his new life. And what Jacob is doing is right before he dies, he's living into his new life. He's living into his new identity. He's living wisely. And in fact, the book of Hebrews in chapter 11 is this famous chapter that sort of highlights sort of the great acts, the great hall of faith. The moments where God worked in people's lives in a way that we should learn how they leaned into God's promises and believed in his goodness. When it gets to Jacob, he talks about this moment. He says, when Jacob was there on his deathbed, blessing his sons, that's when he understood. And why would it say this is the moment when he no longer became a fool, became wise, and did something that's worth us learning and embodying in our life? What happened there? Jacob believed the gospel. And he began to understand how the gospel actually lives and applies for all of life. And when you begin to take the gospel, it's not just something that's maybe just for the beginning of Christianity or something that's for people out there in the world, but it's something to take into my life for all of life. You're living in your new story and you're becoming wise. And here's what it looks like. Jacob wanted to tell his grandchildren, he said, this is how you become wise. You believe the gospel, and what it will do is it will, one, make you rethink the values of this world. Two, it will make you rethink your story. And three, it'll make you rethink God's care. And that's how you live a wise life. If you knew that now, you would become more free. Number one, if you begin to understand what Jacob says, you will rethink the values of this world. So here's the drama of this story, and here's what happens in the drama of the moment. Jacob is sort of in his last hours and summons his favorite child, Joseph, to bring him his children. So what we're told is that Jacob says, bring me your children. And Joseph comes with his two children, Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, Manasseh is the older son, so he holds him in his left hand, it says in verse 14. And Ephraim, the younger son, he holds him in his right hand. And the reason he holds them in these hands is he's taking them to his father, and he's going to bless them. His father's going to give them the blessing. And he puts the older son in his left hand because he's going to, it's sort of the opposite, and be face to face. Because what he wants to do, and he expects his father to do, is to take his right hand and to put it on his older son, Manasseh. And his left hand, and to put that on his younger son, Ephraim. Because what the right hand was, is it was the sign of favor and blessing. It was the sign of true honor, of true love, of true promise. And so Joseph is actually doing what anybody would have done in that moment and takes them this way to his father. But what we're told in verse 14 is that when Jacob begins to bless the sons, he crosses his hands. And he actually takes his right hand and puts it on the younger son, Ephraim. And he takes his left hand and puts it on the older son, Manasseh. And when he does this, we're told in verse 17, it says, this displeased Joseph. Now, we're not sure if Joseph got angry or if that just means he was saying like, no, Father, not like that. As if he sort of tossed it up to sort of old age and confusion. But what Jacob does is he looks back at his son and he says, I know exactly what I'm doing. Now, this scene is it's just tremendous story writing. Because what we're given here is that the end of Jacob's life is in full circle. It's ending just where it began. The drama of Jacob's life, if you don't know it, began when his father was dying, was elderly and in his bed, and had summoned his children for the blessing. And he's gonna bless his older son Esau, even though the prophecy had been, you must bless the younger one, Jacob. And so his mother finds out that this is going to happen and says, we've got to sort of scheme and figure this whole thing out. And you have this older man who can barely see, and because he can barely see, they can pull off this scheme. And Jacob is just like his father Isaac. he's lying there, and it seems like the same story is about to happen. But the author of Genesis gives us this unique detail. In verse 10, he says, the eyes of Israel were dim, and they could not see. Now, that's an amazing detail because it was also true of Isaac. It says his eyes were dim and could not see. And when Joseph sees his father mix up the hands, he thinks, well, the old man can't see. He doesn't know what's going on. Or he thinks also he doesn't quite understand what he's doing. But what the author is actually doing to us is he's basically saying, here's the question for all of you to answer right now. Who actually can see? See, Jacob is old and his eyes physically don't work. And Joseph is young and he's strapping and healthy and his eyes work and he thinks he can see. But the author this is a classic Hebrew pun. And what the author is saying is the man who physically can't see is actually the one who can truly see. Because what Jacob is showing us is he says, hey, here's when the gospel gets a hold of your life and you begin to understand how God works in the world, one thing that becomes clear that you never see in natural life is that life is upside down. That the way God works, the way God values, the things that he prioritizes are always backwards to the values of this world. See, every culture has a way of making things work. Every culture's got a way of saying, if you check these boxes, if you're about these things, you'll move up the ladder. So in this culture, if you're a male, if you're wealthy, if you're the oldest son, you're the one who society favors. You're the one who will get the job. You're the one who will get all the prestige. You're the one who will get all the highlights. And while we definitely don't value those things the way we did then, today, we value other things. We value being smart. We value being wealthy. We value being good looking. We value having connections. We value all kinds of things that say, if you have these, you'll move up the ladder. And we're so sure this is how life works, and we can see it. And when we say, like, no, when it doesn't work out, we're like, no, why is this not working out the same way? But here's what this text is teaching you. All those things that you value, all those things you're so sure you've got to have, your children have got to have, everybody's got around you. You know what's happening when you value and you put all of the weight on those things? Here's what's happening. You're having your pocket picked. Now, we don't ride the subway like a lot here in LA, but like other cities, do you know how this works when somebody picks your pocket? Here's what they do. They get your attention over here. Pay attention to something, and all the while, all it takes is a second. You look over here, and when you give your attention over there, what do? They reach around, and they pick your pocket, and you have no idea what's happening. And see, all of these things about us, all of these things we're so sure about life. Whenever you go, this is the way the world works, you are just getting distracted with something. And the world is just picking your soul's pocket. Freddie DeBoer, who's not a Christian, is this guy in Brooklyn, wrote an article in The Atlantic a couple years ago. That was really fascinating because he's talking about human nature and what we value and what we think is significant and how we think the world works and why is it not working out the way that we thought it would work. Because some of you hear me say the values of this world up the ladder are not the way of life, and you're like, I don't believe you. So Freddie DeBoer, here's what he says. He says, I've known people in life who were the most outwardly secure and confident, who never betrayed a hint of doubt or guilt or remorse, who projected cool at all times, who were quite popular, who received plaudits and positive affirmation from others at all times, who were academically and professionally successful, who had money and respect, and who cultivated the kinds of micro-celebrity that are common to contemporary life. And yet the flow of life revealed that inside they hated themselves, fully and completely, and with a bitterness that I can't imagine enduring at any time, let alone all the time. None of that stuff really mattered. See, what he's saying is, look, the values that we're so sure are the way of life. I know people that go after them, and you know what? I'm watching them have their pocket picked all the time. And Joseph's looking at his father. And he's saying, what are you doing? You're not getting this blessing right. And Jacob's basically saying, oh, yes, I am. Because what you think the way of the world is, son, will always set you up to get your pocket picked. But the theme of Genesis that Jacob finally learns here at the end of his life is that what God does is he always blesses the outsider. He always blesses the youngest one. He always blesses the weakest one. He always blesses the ugly one. Because what he wants to do is always be demonstrating that his grace is sufficient for everything. Now, here's what this sort of begins to mean for your life. Going forward, the things of the kingdom of God, like character, like serving, like giving, like sacrificing, like forgiving, are always the things that are bringing heaven here, that are renewing this world. But what keeps you on the outside, what keeps you from living out the blessing in the wise life, is when we resist those things and you live for the ladders of this world, that actually one day you're going to climb and realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. But what Jacob understood in that moment is he says, son, if you want to live the new story and the new life, the values of this world, you've got to rethink them. Secondly, though, he teaches his sons, or teaches his grandchildren, he says, I want you to understand what I know, and I'll help you rethink your story. See, Jacob, he then takes his grandchildren and begins to bless them in verse 15. And what's incredible about this blessing that he gives to his grandchildren is he starts to want things for them that he himself experienced. Now, pause. If you lived this life that's like just photograph worthy, like the Instagram life we all want, it would be great if you came into me and you're like, Lord, I want Alex to have my magical life too. I would be like, yes, Lord, hear his prayer. But Jacob, here's his story. He was rejected. He was unloved. He was tricked. He was lonely. He was fearful in relationships. Every relationship he'd ever had, he blew. Like, he did not have a good sibling relationship. He had a terrible relationship with his parents. None of those marriages seemed to be flying out. His children seemed so angry at him that they took his favorite son and sold him into slavery. And Jacob's saying, Lord, give my sweet grandchildren things in my life that I had. Why in the world would you want that for your grandchildren? What he says, though, in verse 16, is he says, Lord, bless them. The God who has been my shepherd my whole life, and the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless these boys. Now, when he says that one line, the angel who redeemed me from all evil, he's identifying a unique moment. Gerhard von Rad in his commentary says, this is the most profound theological thing he says. He's identifying this moment that he says that was so deep and profound for him, it could have turned a life you never would have wanted into something that Jacob thought, how could anybody not want my life? And what he's referring to is this moment in Genesis chapter 32 when he wrestles what we understand to be God in the flesh all night long. And what happens is when they begin to wrestle, the man begins to say, look, your name, it will no longer be Jacob. It will no longer be deceiver. It will no longer be liar. It will no longer be somebody who undermines me. Your name is going to be changed. It's going to be Israel. And he says, you redeemed me from all evil. Now, when he says redeemed me from all evil, we can read that and wonder, what does he mean? Like, does he mean like brought me out of evil that happens to me? Or is he talking about evil that I did? Well, when he uses the word redeemed, it's actually the Hebrew word goel. And that is what we understand later on to be the idea of a kinsman redeemer. Now, if you don't know what that, you can go read about it in Leviticus 25, when it became sort of a natural part of the law and society of Israel. But a kinsman redeemer was an idea that if something happened to you, like you got into debt, and your life began to be unmanageable, and you were just drowning in external problems, and you were put into slavery, somebody in your family was required by law to come along and to sort of pay off your debts and to purchase them and to purchase you back and to bring you back into life. And Jacob is saying, in that moment, he's reflecting on all of his mistakes. He says, you paid for me. You purchased me back. And here's what he's teaching his grandchildren. When you get to the end of your life, you begin to understand that the blessed life and the good life and a great story that we all want is not a story that avoids mistakes. It's not a life without blemishes. The great story, the blessed life, is a life that has experienced redemption. Now, hear this, because all of you are terrified about this for your children and terrified about this for yourself. That you think a great life is one that never experiences any problems, that never goes through any strife. A great marriage is something where we never fight. No, Jacob's saying the best life, the best story is one where there's been deep brokenness and profound redemption. And when you experience that, he says, my children, I want that for your life. I want you to experience that, because what the gospel gives you is it gives you revisionist history on all of what you think could be terrible things when they get redeemed. To say, almost, Lord, I'm glad I screwed up, because it helped me understand what the most profound love is in this world, and that's forgiving, redemptive grace. And I'll give you 2 signs to know if you begin to be able to live this. Look, 2 signs that you're becoming wise and you can begin to rethink your story. A, you will stop judging yourself so much. See, when somebody asks you about who you are and your testimony, I mean, we almost can never tell that truthfully. Like there's things about it that we kind of, at best moments, we can kind of give a superficial description, or we give sort of a revisionist details. You know, it wasn't as, so they don't think it's as bad as we say, or we give caveats all the time to say, you know, well, it's not as, you know, bad as you think, or I was in a bad place at that time, clearly. But what the gospel says is that when you begin to realize that the point of life is not to avoid mistakes, but to be redeemed, then what that does is it doesn't say, well, nothing matters going forward. It helps you rethink what's happened to you with freedom and joy, so that you can talk about yourself in the most honest, open way ever, because you're not living on eggshells. You're not walking around trying to prove yourself, trying to justify yourself. And you can also not only do that to other people, but do it to yourself. See, some of you can talk openly to other people, but you do it in shame. You just beat yourself up. Just at night, like there's these things that you just can't stand about your personality, about your body, about your story, about your history. And you're so harsh on yourself that you build walls around your heart. But what the gospel wants to give you is the ability to look back on all of your stories that you've wanted to grit your teeth over and just smile. And not saying it doesn't matter, but understanding it's been forgiven. And your kinsman redeemer has come and paid for all of that. The second sign that you can begin to rethink your stories this way is not just that you won't judge yourself, but you'll stop being so judgmental to others. See, if you don't have the waters of forgiveness and grace swimming in your life all the time, you will always be judging other people. You have to. It's the only way to sort of feel good about yourself. It's the only way to get self-esteem is to feel better than other people. And that just means you will always be shocked by other people's mistakes. You'll need to focus on them and revisit them and step above them so that you feel better about yourself. And you will give up on people really easily. But that kind of life makes you lonelier and lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. But when you begin to be freed up by the gospel, you know what it begins to do is other people's mistakes, you either understand them as things of, I've already done that, or you understand how prone you are to that. Martin Lloyd-Jones has got a great sermon on this idea where he just talks about if you begin to understand how redeemed and forgiven you are in the gospel, that you had an unpayable debt, and God comes in Christ and pays all of it. It doesn't pay 80% and then you work off the last 10 and figure out how to pay it off yourself. He pays all of it. He says, when you understand that, he says, no one can harm you, and you have no right to harm anybody else. He said, there is nothing anyone can say to you that is harsher than the truth is already said to you. And there's nothing you can say about anyone else that isn't already true about you. And Jacob looks at his grandchildren and longs for them to embrace that. He says, I wish I knew this when I was your age. I wish I had the freedom and joy and the security of God's love to stop being so harsh on myself and to stop being so harsh on other people and to be freed up into that. Look, the news story, the wise life, at the end we all want. If you get the gospel, it will help you rethink the values of this world, rethink your story. Then thirdly, rethink God's care in your life. So when he begins this blessing in verse 15, he says, the God before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, walked, the God who has been my shepherd all of my life, long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless these boys. He gives this threefold sort of almost cultic hymn prayer over these boys. He says, the God of whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked. What he's doing right there is he's referring to how good and faithful God has been to his whole family. He's saying, look, you, God, you were after me and loved me when you called my grandfather Abraham. You were faithful to me when you took my father up on the mount with my grandfather and did not have the knife come down, but you provided then. And what he's doing is he's reflecting on all of his life, and he is saying, you have never, ever left me. You have never forsaken me. You've never gone away. Now, if your life is ideal, that's an easy prayer, right? Like if you never experience any pain relationally, if you always financially everything's perfect for you, if you never have any strife anywhere, any insecurities, any anxiety, of course God is faithful. He's never left us. But Jacob, he grew up understanding there was a prophecy over his life. He's the blessed one. He's the loved one. And his father would never have any of it. He has to flee because his brother, his only sibling, wants to kill him. He's out penniless, homeless, lost in the desert. He flees to his uncle, finds the love of his life. His uncle tricks him, makes him work 14 years for the love of his life, finally marries her. She dies not long after. They get a family. He's got this 12 sons, but one is so beloved, and that's the one who his other sons scheme up, steal, sell into slavery, and he gets to spend almost none of that adult life with him. And he looks at the end of his life and says, through all of that, through every single moment, you have never left me. How in the world do you begin to think like that? Well, here's how. He says, the metaphor he gives, he says, you have been a shepherd to me all of my life. Now, this metaphor is really profound. You have been a shepherd to me. Now, a shepherd for us, there's a lot of Sunday school-like pictures that imagine them to be these sweet, caring people. But the thing about a shepherd is when they're caring for the sheep never think they're getting care. They never think the shepherd's loving them. They never think the shepherd is protecting them and taking care of them. They always think the shepherd's doing the opposite of what they're receiving. I mean, so like, sheep who are like the dumbest, stupidest animals in all of the animal kingdom often are putting themselves in harm's way and danger. And when the shepherd looks at them, he doesn't say, "Here, sheepy, sheepy, Fluffy, walk away from that lion." What happens is the shepherd picks it up, throws it over his shoulders, drags it back, and the sheep is never going, "Thank you. Wow." It's squealing, it's yelling, and it's screaming, because what it always thinks is that care is hate, and protection is never love. Elizabeth Elliot, in one of her books, tells a story about this. When she was in northern Scotland one time, and she was with these shepherd farmers, she saw something that just gave her the perfect vivid image of this. She said what the shepherds would do is they would dunk these sheep in antiseptic, and what they would tie the feet up of the sheep, and they'd have this big pool that they would dunk them in upside down to protect them from insects and parasites. It was the only way to sort of keep them safe and alive through the whole winter. But she said every time they dunked them down there, the sheep was not like, "Thank you for giving me this protection." What she said is they think the shepherd's killing them. She said, "I've had some experiences in my life which have made me feel very sympathetic to this poor sheep. There are times I couldn't figure out any reason for the treatment I was getting from my great shepherd whom I trusted. And like these sheep, I didn't have a hint of explanation." Look, if there is a great shepherd, and he's come into a broken, cursed world to redeem it and to care for it and love it, then that means, by the very logic of it, his care and his shepherding will by no means be the pattern and values of this world. That when he loves you, it's not going to feel like everything else in this world feels, because he's come to subvert it and to redeem it and to show us truly what it means to be cared for, redeemed, and protected out of the curses of this world to be brought into a new one. See, what Jacob does is he says, "All of my life, every moment you have shepherded me. You have loved me through every moment of it." You know that song that we often sing it here? All my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. If you will learn to make that like one of the most common things your soul sings, what it will do is it will give you a perspective on life now. To say these isolated moments that feel so lonely, that feel so directionless, that feel so lost, they won't feel like these moments where I'm being dunked under and he's trying to kill me. You'll begin to step back like Jacob and take all of these isolated moments and say they're not isolated, they're all together, everything together. It's not a bunch of random mess. It's one glorious tapestry where he's been a shepherd to me all of my life. Now, how do you do that? The only way you do that is the gospel. See, if you don't have the gospel, you will build your life on something. And what you'll do is you'll build your life on this one thing, and you'll just expect God to kind of give you that life. And you'll live on this sort of religious paradigm, which will feel like eggshells. Like I have to be this kind of person in order for him to give me my life. And when it doesn't feel like he's giving you that thing that you need to be your life, it will always feel like he hates you. It will always feel like he's being mean to you. It will always feel like either he is horrible and it will put you into bitter doubt, or you're horrible. It will put you into unnecessary shame. But if you understand what a great shepherd he is, and in the paradigm of the gospel, that you are loved and secured, and there's nothing that will ever take that away from you, then what that will do is it will make it more like a child who looks at his parents when they're grounded, punished, or whatever, and says, this is hard, difficult, and challenging, but I know I'm allowed to be in this house, and you love me and are for me. And if you begin to believe the gospel and realize every time God does this to me, it's not because he's mad at me. It's not because he's punishing me. It's not because he's withholding from me. He is trying to show me something that I don't have the wisdom to understand. And he's trying to put a life together that if I had the ability to step back, I would say, this is a masterpiece. And if you hold on to the gospel, it will give you the freedom and joy now to begin to see that. And how do you do that? The only way you do that is if you look at the one now, if you look at him at the table, that when Jesus is dying, it in no way felt like the goodness of God. It in no way felt like he was taking care of us, like he was redeeming us. It made us, it looked like a shepherd who was dunking the world under poison and saying, how could you do this? This was our one chance. This was the Messiah we thought was going to do it. And the great shepherd says, just trust me, follow me, believe me. And Jacob, right before he dies, believed it. And when he believed it, he went from a fool who was blessed to one who was free in living the blessing. And he's saying to his children, and I'm saying to you, believe it now. You can have it now, and then you will be blessed, and you will live and know what I guarantee you'll wish at the end of your life that you knew now. Take it. Let me pray. Father, Lord Jesus, we wish for the gospel to be so loud and profound and rich on our souls that we would not need to live in fear and anxiety and wonder about anything other than your good, steady, loving hand. You are good, and it is so hard in many times of life to believe that. Lord, help us in this moment to believe it a little bit more. In Jesus' name, amen.